So Ken Opal, welcome to my computer.
Thank you.
We're
It's wonderful to be here.
we are planning on doing. I'm Kevin Sylvester. I'll just slip in front of the camera there. We are planning on doing something that has never been done before in the history
Never.
of the COVID-19 isolation camps. What are we planning on doing, Ken?
Well, what we're going to attempt here, Kevin, is a simultaneous reading. I'm going to read a section from my new book, Bloom.
Awesome and creepy book.
Thank you. And while this is happening, you will see as magic before you, Kevin Sylvester drawing an illustration from the reading as we progress. So we're going to try this out, right?
All right, so I'm just going to get the screen up so that people can see what I'm going to draw. Let's go.
All right. So this is a section where my three characters, Anaya, Petra, and Seth, are on the school field. It's morning time. The scene opens with Petra and Seth noticing something happening on their school field. "Hey, look," Petra said. "A deer." A fawn had wandered into the middle of the school field. It bent its dappled neck and began eating grass. It wasn't the first time. Luckily, lately the deer had gotten pretty bold. The gym teacher, Mr. Hilborn, always drove them off, but Petra felt sorry for them. There was so little proper grass now that they could graze on. Against the back wall of the school near the picnic tables, Petra saw a bunch of kids watching the deer. They were the smokers. They were pretty much the only people who lingered outside these days, with the allergenic pollen flying around. She recognized Jen Richards and Teresa, who did yearbook with Anaya, and her boyfriend, Fleetwood. "Oh my God," Teresa cried out suddenly, dropping her cigarette and running into the field. Petra's gaze whipped back to the deer. Its rear half had disappeared into the earth. Pawing frantically at the grass, its neck and shoulders straining, it struggled to haul itself out of the hole. Its eyes were huge and white with shock. "We've got to help it," Petra gasped, and she was already running, Seth right behind her. When Petra reached the deer, it was still flailing, trying to climb out of the hole. But the sides of the hole weren't dirt. Petra stared in incomprehension. "What is that?" The walls of the hole were slick and faintly purple, with a fleshy rim around the top that was starting to flex and slowly contract. A sickly perfume wafted up. She thought she heard a faraway voice shouting, "Don't move, guys, stay still." "Let's pull it out," panted Teresa, who just arrived with Fleetwood and Jen. The deer suddenly collapsed. Legs twisted under. It wailed piteously from the bottom of the hole, and then the top began to contract like a set of hideous lips mashing together. "Don't move," came the shout again, louder now, and Petra wrenched her gaze away to see Anaya hurrying toward them along the very edge of the field. "Don't move," Anaya bellowed. "The field's not safe." Seth watched Anaya crossing the field one careful step at a time. "The ground could cave in," she cried. Seth stared at the sealed-over hole, which was shuddering as the deer kicked from inside. "What is this thing?" Petra gasped. "It's a plant," Anaya said. "A plant?" Teresa looked like she was on the verge of panic. "It just ate a freaking deer," Fleetwood said. "There could be more of them," Anaya yelled. "Lots more." Seth wished she hadn't said that. Teresa and the others looked even more freaked out now. His own heartbeat was loud in his ears. "Hey, what's going on?" Seth glanced back at the school. Mr. Hilborn was doing his angry gym teacher walk toward them. "What are you guys doing to my field?" he hollered. "Mr. Hilborn, stay there," Anaya shouted. Mr. Hilborn kept coming. "Stop," Anaya said. "There's things under the ground." "Nobody run," Seth said to the other kids and hoped they'd listen. "If it can eat a deer," Teresa said, and grabbed Fleetwood's hand, "it can eat us." "Is that a hole?" said Mr. Hilborn, squinting in annoyance, or maybe it was confusion as he kept coming. "What are you guys—" The earth opened under him. He fell down to his armpits, scrabbling at the ground, and then his head kicked back as he was pulled completely out of sight. Seth looked at the others and could tell Teresa was about to bolt. He saw it in her eyes. Anaya must have seen it too, because she said, "Teresa, don't." It all happened in a matter of heartbeats. Teresa ran for the school. Fleetwood charged after her. After 4 strides, the earth swallowed him whole. "No," Seth heard Anaya gasp as she chased after Teresa. "Teresa, stop!" Anaya bellowed. Seth was about to sprint after Anaya when Petra ran off in a completely different direction. "Petra!" he shouted. She kept going. Seth looked at Anaya running and Petra running a different way. How could he chase after both of them? He took off after Petra. 6 strides ahead of him, she plunged through the earth down to her shoulders. Seth threw himself to the ground and reached out. Her hands clasped his. Pull me, she wailed. I'm trying, he hollered. He kicked himself into sitting and leaned back with all his weight. Petra sank deeper, pulling him with her. He could have let go, but he didn't. He clenched his teeth and let himself fall into the hole with her. So that's a little bit
Woo!
from Bloom.
There we go.
Look at that.
Wow, it's a little. I'm not sure the mood of this one matches exactly the style that of your writing, but it's sort of cartoony and goofy, and I try to capture the creepiness of the black, the plants that are taking over everything.
Grass. Hey, and that's Mr. Hilborn in it now?
That's Mr. Hilborn's head.
The gym teacher.
Yes.
Nice.
If kids are watching this, what works for you as a writer in that section? What did you like about it? What were you thinking when you wrote that?
Well, it's action, so there's a lot of choreography. There's just a lot of direction that goes into it because you've got, Petra and Seth watching from one end. You got the smokers from the other. You got the deer in the middle, and then you've got Anaya sort of coming into it. You got Mr. Hilborn coming into it. So you got to keep track of everyone. It's quite difficult just to keep orienting the reader. And what I like about action scenes sometimes is you can sort of play with the tone and the tempo. So I kind of like the sudden appearance of the gym teacher just walking into it. You're pretty sure it's not going to go well for him.
Yeah,
it's a weird little bit of just sort of almost slightly comic, but also horrible. But it's nice having sort of dual levels and people talking over each other. Some groups who want to run, other people trying to calm them down. So it's nice to have a bunch of sort of different colors in the palette when you write an action scene. But what about you? Like when you're drawing it, like what are your chief concerns? When you start.
Sure. Well, I'll go back to the drawing I did, and I think if people were watching while I was drawing, what they'll notice is that I tend to draw very sloppily and with a super loose hand. And I actually find that the more loose you are, so let's say I wanted to draw, let's draw the gym teacher's head here, right? So what I might do is I might draw very loosely like that. And usually what I'm doing is I'm drawing a shape, right? And then what I do is as I would add more detail to it, I would usually lower my pen size and then to add the detail down and even lower and lower and lower. When I do it on paper, I tend to use a lot of technical pens and stuff. Last thing I'll say is if you are a kid and you are drawing, you're almost always tempted to draw something that's like this. And this is not very visually interesting. A straight line like that has exactly the same weight is actually not that interesting. Whereas if you draw something that looks, well, this is not necessarily the best pen nib for this, but I'll show you. If you draw something that looks like that, it has a little bit of variation in tone, it gets thicker, and when you draw like that and you change the sizes a little bit, your eye actually likes the picture better. It goes to different things and moves around, and it's actually more excited by visually looking at stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
That's what I would say.
I've never considered these things, Kevin. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Well, I also like how quickly, when you drew the face, like just how with a few, sort of sketchy lines, you instantly capture a face and a sort of an attitude. And it's always amazing for me to watch. My skills are so verbal that I can't even imagine being able to do this.
Well, you probably find this in writing too. One of the hardest things is actually often it looks more like I want it to look at the very beginning, and then I mess it up the more I add to it. So
yeah, it's like the sketch has all this energy and potential, and then you got to make decisions and sort of firm it up and make it more rendered. And it's like that with the writing. It always seems like such a great idea at the beginning, and then you get in there with your crude tools and you just hammer it out, and it's like, that's all right, but I don't know. It seemed so much better at the beginning.
Yeah. 100%. All right, so show people your book cover again, and and tell them where it's being published in Canada and the U.S. and around the world globe.
Yeah, so it's out in Canada, HarperCollins Canada, and it's out in the U.S. with Knopf Books for Young Readers. So it's been out in the U.S. just a couple of weeks, been out in Canada since early February. coming. Well, it's out in Germany too. Coming out in the Netherlands, so it's getting around, even in this time of plague.
And it's part of a trilogy, just in case people don't know that.
Yes, first book in a trilogy.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Thanks for doing this with me today, Ken.
No, thank you, Kevin. That was fun.
All right, cheers, everybody.
Bye.